I want to tell you how weak. I don't know whether it's going to be exploited. That's a whole other thing. But I'll tell you how weak the Democrat and Hillary position in this Benghazi hearing is. They just had some congressman from Washington State, a guy named Smith. The reason for Benghazi. Reason Benghazi happened was budget cuts due to a Republican government shutdown. Greetings, my friends. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, and we are back at it, as promised yesterday. Here for yet another 3-hour excursion into broadcast excellence. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. So I've been trying to do a number of different things simultaneously here. Assembling today's show prep data, and at the same time trying to focus and pay enough attention on the Hillary Clinton Benghazi hearings to at least be able to offer you some learned insight into this. And I want to go back and just remind you of a point that I made about all this on Monday, and that is that all of this has been a media hype for the express purpose of, when it's over, being able to claim that the Republicans did not land a glove on Mrs. Clinton, that she showed up and that she looked good and that she was composed and that she triumphed over this, and the Republicans weren't able to do a thing about it. That is the objective. That is what and by the way, that's the script. You know, everything in Washington is, to one extent or another, to one degree or another, scripted, and in some cases well in advance. So is this entire situation we think is unfolding spontaneously about the Paul Ryan and Speaker of the House story. I mean, I don't know anything specific. All I can offer you is my insight, my opinion, which is based on my intelligence guided by experience. But I don't think that much of what we see coming out of Washington, particularly as it is encapsulated in the daily media presentation called news, I don't think there's anything really spontaneous. I think it's all a script to one degree or another, and much goes on behind the scenes that we don't see and are not told about, that is responsible for what we do see or read about or what have you. For example, and I'll get into it in more detail as the program unfolds, but the Paul Ryan for Speaker of the House, I think that's been a done deal for days and maybe even weeks. I don't think we would have gotten to this point if Ryan had not already gotten some assurances from the Freedom Caucus, the conservative House members, he was going to get enough support from them to even take it this far. It's just not how professional and seasoned experts do it. It's no different than a president having a very important summit with a foreign leader, let's say Reagan and Gorbachev. Everything that they were going to do was agreed to before they ever met. And if they couldn't agree to it, they wouldn't meet. So that when the actual summit or meeting takes place, it's made to look like it's all happening at that moment. But it really isn't. All of it's too important to leave it to chance for both sides. So you have all these meetings consisting of underlings and advisors, and you try to come to some kind of agreement before the actual confab or summit or meeting between the two principals. Well, you often will apply the same kind of thing here to the Hillary Clinton Benghazi hearings, although there's admittedly and understandably far more spontaneity here, because whatever questions or whatever line of attack the Republicans have, I don't think they've exposed it to Mrs. Clinton. In fact, I've detected something that I actually suggested earlier this year on these hearings. And I'll just briefly, before getting into that in detail, I suggested that in addition to, and maybe with even more emphasis than focusing on this email business, tie her to Libya. She clearly wants to be seen as the person who vanquished Gaddafi. Well, let her have it, because Libya is an absolute mess, just like the rest of the Middle East is. But if she wants to be tied to Libya, do it. And so far, there have been a couple Republicans who have done a really bang-up good job today of focusing her as the architect of what happened in Libya. Benghazi just a part of that. Taking out Gaddafi, who had become an ally of sorts, actually led to all kinds of messes being created, not just in Libya, but throughout the region. And I think that the overall objective here, if it's not too late, if they could just focus on her incompetence as Secretary of State, with the emails in Benghazi folded in as part of it, could actually end up being somewhat of a surprise attack, and it would be effective. Now, the biggest lie that I have heard yet, and we have a long way to go, the biggest lie that so far has I guess, become the identity of these hearings is that Hillary's top concern in Benghazi was the safety of American personnel there. It really has been interesting to watch her contradict herself on this. On one hand, she wants to be seen as owning it all, in charge of and knowing everything. And then depending on the questions she gets, that was sort of, associates were dealing with that. I don't quite recall. I'm not really sure. So she wants it both ways. She wants to be able to say that she was in total command, fully aware, making all the decisions. But then on certain things, not so much. On certain things, it's impossible for one Secretary of State to know everything, Congressman. That's not what I mean. But I was aware of this. No, I'm not aware of what my two associates... No, I didn't know it. I can't dispute it. But she wants it both ways here. She also has said, to me, this is a hanging curveball waiting. And I don't know if they're going to do anything with it, or maybe they already have. Questioning is ongoing here. She said there was no credible threat on the morning of 9/11, 2012. Really? There was no credible threat? Why then did the State Department of Cairo issue an apology on that very day? Well, we know why. They issued an apology on 9/12 for something that hadn't happened yet, because they had already laid the groundwork for blaming a video. And they were apologizing in advance, as they said, hoping to prevent any rioting or unrest. If they could just, as good liberals do, hey, we're sorry, we didn't really mean anything by it, you don't have to attack us. I thought that might work. There was a credible threat. There was a credible threat across Egypt, a credible threat in Libya. There were credible threats every day. To say that there wasn't a credible threat, which takes me back, the biggest lie of all is that Hillary's top concern was the safety of the American personnel there. That's not true. And you can go back and listen to the families of any of the four who died there. It was not her concern. She's even been tripped up on that a couple times today. In reality, Hillary Clinton's biggest concern was preserving the campaign lie that Obama had terrorism on the run. You remember the Democrat convention? GM is alive and Al-Qaeda is dead. Whatever the phrase was, we had saved General Motors and we had vanquished terrorism. We beat Al-Qaeda. We beat bin Laden. Bin Laden is dead. GM's alive, or whatever. Remember, they had established a theme for their convention and their campaign. And here comes Benghazi, and they cannot allow for what happened in Benghazi to deter their efforts here. So the concoction of that video as the reason for the unrest in Benghazi and over in Cairo throughout the region, that was a lie, and it was to preserve the campaign lie that Obama had terrorism on the run. Everyone and everything including the truth, was sacrificed in order to preserve the lie that Obama had beat al-Qaeda by killing bin Laden and had saved the economy by reviving General Motors. That's why the lie on the video was concocted. It was about the election in 2012. The evidence of that was clear when we saw Candy Crowley in the debate prior to that election join sides with Obama when Mitt Romney was about to score some big points on this whole Benghazi thing. So there's much to uncover here. I just don't know whether it's going to be. And even if it is, I don't know how it's going to be reported. I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. If any of you have had it on TV, when you see the wide shot of Mrs. Clinton sitting at the witness table and then the long desk where sit our esteemed elected officials. And one view of that picture is, and then they get a close-up of Mrs. Clinton, of course. And you say to yourself, I can't believe this woman is on the cusp of becoming president of the United States. We really to believe this? The other view, the other way of seeing the optics today is the way the drive-bys will position it for the low-information voters. And it'll go something like this. A lonely, valiant, and brave Hillary Clinton sits alone under the glaring lights, being interrogated by a nearly all-white Republican committee on her role in American foreign policy in the Middle East. That's probably how this whole thing is going to be portrayed at places like Yahoo News and Vox Media, wherever the low-information crowd goes to get their news. So the objective here, as I say, when this is all over, is to praise Mrs. Clinton triumphing on her own and by herself, facing long odds. The Republicans didn't lay a hand on her, and now there's nothing stopping her quest for the White House. That's what they hope to be able to say, and they'll say it regardless what happens here, especially since Biden decided he's going to stay dressed, keep his clothes on, and not run. We'll take a break and be back after it.